And welcome back to Reunited States, the podcast where we bring rational discourse back to our national dialogue. From Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Ehrig.
And from Manchester, New Hampshire, my name is Jesse Saywell.
So what do we got today? We have a lot of news to get through, and I think that's pretty much going to be our show.
Yeah, I mean, today's going to be a little interesting because we have things we want to talk about, but we're not going to kind of do a deep dive into any one specific topic because, as you may have noticed, there's a lot going on right now, and as I've said before, this is by design. I mean, just very dangerous things taking place in this country. But you know, the good news is we have Chuck Schumer on our side, and if you saw him at that recent rally, we will win! We won't rest! We won't... I mean, come on, like, this is just a joke, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, that's the Democratic Party that you have fighting for you right now against fascists.
Chuck Schumer, come defend yourself on the pod.
Yeah, please, Chuck Schumer, if you have the stamina, please come on to the podcast, join us, have a discussion, because I've given you a lot of credit in the past. I think you did some great stuff in the first Trump administration, but this ain't it. This ain't it, so.
You're being outlapped by Bernie. Come on, man.
I have to say, when it comes to my stamina, it is huge.
It's bigger than the oligarchy.
All right. Well, let's get into some lightning news here, y'all. We've got a lot to talk about. First up, we've got RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard have advanced out of the Senate committees on party line votes and are barreling towards likely confirmation votes within the full Senate. Regarding RFK Jr., Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Republican, he's a former practicing physician. He was uncertain about RFK Jr., about advancing him, and he was kind of the decisive vote. He said he received assurances from the White House and RFK Jr. this past weekend that led him to his decisive yes vote, allowing him to advance. Cassidy is up for re-election in 2 years. And he also is one of the Republicans who voted. He's one of the only remaining Republicans who voted to convict Donald Trump in his second impeachment trial, the January 6th impeachment. This certainly seems like a oath of fealty to Donald Trump. Similar thing was said by Tom Cotton about his initial concerns relating to Tulsi Gabbard, who has a complicated history we've talked about on this podcast. Former Democrat, ran for the Democratic nomination in 2020, then turned into a MAGA supporter, hates the Democratic Party, has published a book about why she left the Democratic Party, also may be an agent for Russia, refused to refer to Edward Snowden as a traitor. A lot of things going on in the confirmation world right now, but, those votes, they've got 53 votes. They can afford to lose 3 people for any of these nominees when it comes to the full Senate, and that's a tough thing for Democrats to overcome. It's why, the presidency is only one component of government, and that's why it's so critical to win Senate races, and we're going to talk a little bit later about, again, why we lost a very significant Senate race in this past election.
Moving on, Trump rescinds his previous plan to enact a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico after what he calls a productive meeting with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum.
I'm gonna give an unpopular thought on this, Tyler. I hope you'll allow this, but I'm gonna give Trump some credit on this, because I think that, on this podcast, we preach being objective, looking at things not just through one, kind of ideological lens. I believe if you don't give credit on anything, you lose credibility on everything. And I'm not going to give Trump credit just to give him credit. I do think that the tariffs thing was insane. And if he had actually enacted these tariffs, which I guess he did, but for 12 seconds? If he had actually enacted these tariffs, we would be suffering greatly. And that's why I was talking to a lot of people and I just said, I can't understand what the political logic is. Because even if you disagree with Trump on things, there always seems to be some sort of silver lining, a political strategy in Trump world as to how to blame the things that he does that are unpopular on someone else, typically on the Democrats. And I couldn't find it with this. And the reality is, it seems like this was, a pressure campaign to try and get something out of Canada and Mexico. And he did. I have watched the MSNBC coverage of this. I have watched the clips in which they say, oh, well, this is exactly what Mexico was already doing, and this is exactly what Canada was already doing. And so Trump got hosed. Apparently he didn't know about this. I hate to break it to you guys, but that's not an honest assessment of what happened. Yes, Mexico already has 15,000 troops at the border. They're adding an additional 10,000. It's an additional 10,000. That's actually significant. And when we talk about fentanyl coming into the country, that's a serious issue that does need to be addressed, and it is going to require Mexico in particular to be actively involved in trying to prevent that from happening. And on the Canadian side, I thought that was a little more silly. Again, he's just picking fights with Canada, but what did we get out of it? Well, they're accelerating what they were already doing. They were kind of dragging their feet on this border security money that they have. So they're accelerating that process. They have named a fentanyl czar or whatever the heck that is, But the reality is, some of this is clearly not, earth-shattering stuff. But you do have to give Trump credit where credit is due, at least I think you do, in forcing our neighbors to do some things that will end up benefiting the United States. Whether you like the politics or not, whether you like the strong-arming of it or not, the end result will be better off for Americans. It will be less money that we will have to spend at the border, both countries. It will be, hopefully a way of limiting fentanyl into the country, as well as, kind of dealing with the crisis at the southern border in particular, which is a humanitarian crisis. We simply have too many people and have had too many people coming over the border who we cannot take care of. This is not we don't have room in the country. This is at the border. Apprehending that number of people and trying to take care of them has become a humanitarian crisis for the people coming to the country. And Mexico has to do more to help the United States, in my opinion, to assist in this. And so I don't like the means of doing it. The tariffs, again, if they actually were enacted, were insane. But if this was really just some sort of ploy, I am going to give him a little bit of credit here, because I think, again, I have to give some level of credit so that when I criticize, you can understand that I really am trying to look at these things objectively.
Yes, in this case, if it were a strong arm tactic, he gets what he wants more or less from Mexico and Canada. But at the same time, if that didn't work, if Canada decided to do what they were originally planning on doing, which was fighting back with a 25% tariff of their own on U.S. goods, and Mexico doing maybe something similar, that would absolutely cripple the economy. I mean, we're kind of really lucky it didn't happen, because it could have.
Oh, of course. And again, that's why, as I said, I thought that the tariffs thing was total nonsense and didn't make any sense. But Trump did recognize that this, regardless of what Canada would put their specific tariffs or what Mexico would put on their tariffs, it would hurt those two countries significantly more than it would hurt us. Significantly. 100 times more. And that's not me just saying. It's actually 100 times more for each of these countries that it would hurt them in terms of the economic impact. So that's a pretty safe bet that they're going to do something. That one of those two countries, if not both of those two countries, were going to cave on this. Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a shitty way to treat your allies. I don't like that, but it's certainly, in the grand scheme of things, when we're talking about what Trump is doing to harm the world and harm our country, the end result is not necessarily a bad thing. So I can't really be critical of him about all these other things if I don't at least acknowledge this one has worked out. Whether it was dumb luck or not, whether it was a reckless decision or not, it has paid off. All right, so we've got 2.2 billion gallons of water that flowed out of California's reservoirs on the orders of President Trump. That was apparently his way of saying, I'm going to save California from the fires, was these reservoirs that I have control over. Not sure why the president has control over reservoirs, but he does. He ordered that they would be opened, and the vast majority of that water seems likely to be wasted. That water, just to clarify and put this into perspective, this water was supposed to be saved for summer. For the hottest part of the year. So, to help farmers in the hottest part of the year. That water was not needed at this moment. And it doesn't do anything to help the fires at all. So he just released billions of gallons of water for no reason. It's just, if anything, this is just punishing California.
It's a little scary. I mean, we've had maybe 4 days of rain this winter so far. And I'm not talking like 4 days of downpours. No, there were like 4 days of light drizzles. Our efforts to contain water for the inevitable drought seasons that we have, it takes every inch. Like, we need that stuff. And so Trump coming out and effectively wasting it it's more than a little concerning.
It's nuts. And in fairness, I've been critical of California and the water conservation efforts in the past because, as you and I have talked about in the past, when California got dumped on with rain in recent years.
2 years ago, we had like a crazy storm, yeah.
Well, you had more water in Los Angeles over the winter than Seattle did 2 years ago. And the vast majority of that went into the ocean because there was not the infrastructure in place to actually conserve a significant amount of this water. Like, so much of that water was not conserved, and I think that that's fair criticism. Again, I'm gonna criticize both sides here. But that was for lack of infrastructure. This is just a dummy who just decided to come in here and open up a reservoir and just let it flow out onto nothingness. I mean, it's insane. And it really does feel spiteful. I mean, it does feel, and I mean, should we be surprised? No, of course not. This is what he does. He's going after people he doesn't like. And he really doesn't like the government of California and really doesn't like Southern California because he has felt like he's been spurned by Hollywood for, the entirety of his career.
Probably really doesn't like Sebastian Stan right about now.
I'm sure he doesn't, yeah. Does a terrible impression of me, it's terrible. Not nearly as good looking as me. Anyway, what's up next?
Secretary of State Marco Rubio struck a deal with El Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele to have deported convicted criminals sent to El Salvador in exchange for a fee. The criminals would be held in what is very infamous in Latin America, the El Salvadorian mega jail known as the Terrorism Confinement Center, or CECOT. The mega prison currently houses mostly like violent gang-related criminals. And inmates there, they're confined to windowless cells 24 hours a day, and they have 30 minutes of like group activities, also in windowless corridors. That thing is like is an insane place. It puts Alcatraz to shame, I swear.
It makes Alcatraz look like you're staying at the Ritz-Carlton.
Absolutely. At least Alcatraz had windows.
It's terrible. It's generally a really, really horrible place. And they've sent several reporters in recent years to do some coverage on this. And it's inhuman. There
was a statement that one of the wardens made where they said, if we can fit 10 people into a cell, we can fit 20. And they just jam-pack people into these cells that they're kept for literally all day.
Yeah.
They're all shirtless, back to back, shoulder to shoulder.
It's awful.
If you guys see pictures of this place, it's quite horrifying. And now they're gonna have U.S. citizens being sent there to be housed in this crazy prison.
Oof. This one just feels mean. Again, there's so much of this stuff right now that's just mean. And, they're trying to make the idea of coming to this country as scary as possible. And, you have to admit they're being quite effective in that way. If you look at so many of the people who were hoping to come to the country, they are saying and telling reporters, I'm hoping to go somewhere else. I can't turn around, I can't go home, but I'm trying to find somewhere else to go. This is a really dark time, and this is not going to be looked back on well by historians, assuming we still have historians. So another scary thing, FBI director nominee Kash Patel, who looks almost certain to be confirmed. This is the guy, reminder, who said that on day one, if he were FBI director, he said on day one he would turn the Herbert Hoover FBI building into a museum of the deep state. Yeah, this is the guy that's about to be running the FBI, able to spy on Americans, work with very little oversight, and he denied in his meeting, his confirmation hearings, knowing a white supremacist podcaster. It's interesting considering he appeared on that podcast 8 different times. I mean, it was just lie after lie after lie, and refusal to answer after refusal to answer. He's going to get confirmed. Again, these elections have consequences, and they have serious consequences. And this one worries me way more than Pete Hegseth, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard. I'm concerned about all of them. But this guy, Kash Patel, running the FBI, is deeply, deeply concerning. I mean, I would rather have Matt Gaetz running the Department of Justice than I would this guy running the FBI. That's how scary I think it is.
Let's not, get ahead of ourselves. This guy is the biggest conspiracy theorist. He's the biggest big lie supporter of all these nominees. He's the one who wrote the kids' books about conspiracy theories. I can never forget.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Yes, you remember Tyler's great rundown on the kids' book.
King Trump and the 10,000 Mules, or whatever the fuck it's called. This man is a very, very dangerous conspiracy theorist. In other dangerous news, Trump fires 2 Democratic commissioners from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. This was shortly after assuming office, just after placing new acting chairman of the commission, Andrea Lucas, in charge. Ms. Lucas has been extremely vocal on her support to remove protections for certain members of the LGBTQ plus community. 3 guesses who those might be. According to sources inside the EEOC, the commission has halted all claims processing for claims alleging sexual orientation and gender identity-based discrimination under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Andrea Lucas wants to make further hard revisions to EEO policy, but these revisions cannot pass without committee vote. However, the committee just had 2 Democrats removed outside their term limits. They would have been term limited in 2026 and 2028, I believe. And it's very unprecedented to remove them outside of their term limits. But, when has that stopped Trump before? So now the commission has 1 Republican, Andrea Lucas, and 1 Democrat, and 3 vacant commission seats, which can be assigned at the will of the president. Now, there is a rule saying that the commission cannot have any more than 3 members of the same political party, which is kind of helpful. But when these commission hearings are just majority rule for a lot of these amendments to EEOC policy, you only need a majority, and 3 would be that majority. Yeah, it's very concerning what's happening in the EEOC right now. This is absolutely related to his rant on DEI.
Of course.
And his war on removing DEI policies from every facet of the government, which is extremely harmful and extremely dangerous to people, members of minority communities across the country. That is no surprise here. But to speak for another second about this EEOC update, because, again, this is extremely, extremely important. Now, the EEOC is responsible for ensuring equal employment, right? It's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It's to ensure that every American has the same right to employment as any other American, regardless of their race, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, etc.
What a radical idea.
I know. Thanks, FDR. You crazy guy, you. But for many states, for many states, the EEOC is the sole governing body that ensures this. Plenty of states have it also in their constitution or also have other circuit court decisions that protect equal employment and discrimination within employment. But there are a good swath of states that do not have these protections for specifically sexual orientation and gender identity-based discrimination. And those states are Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Wyoming. Those states do not have those protections written in their state legislature, nor are there state court decisions that protect them. They only get their governance from the EEOC. And so if the EEOC is halting claims processing for claims alleging discrimination due to sexual orientation or gender identity for equal employment, people in these states that I listed do not have protections against discrimination for employment based off these factors. That's the dangerous part about this, and that's the scary part about very, very small and very unknown moves that Trump is doing. You know, we talk about these big things that he does. We talk about smokescreens and why it's ridiculous that everyone talks about this. Nobody talks about what I just mentioned. You're not seeing this on CNN, on BBC, on MSNBC, any of these media stations. They're not talking about Andrea Lucas, acting chairman of the EEOC. They're not talking about these Democrats being removed from the commission, which allows further changes that remove protections from certain protected groups. Because nobody really notices. Nobody's noticing these small changes. He is going to render the EEOC completely inept. And if they're inept, again, these states I mentioned follow the EEOC to ensure equal employment for the constituents of that state, which now certain communities will no longer have those protections currently. So we really have to pay attention to some of these very quiet moves that we're seeing. Things that, I mean, these commissioners were removed overnight. Very dangerous things. And again, some of the things that no one's going to expect, but rights will be taken away in ways that we don't expect, because we expect the loud and the bombastic Trump to do these crazy things and orders. But that's not the way he's going to operate when it comes down to actually harming our actual equal protections under the law. This is how he's going to do it. He's going to do it overnight. He's going to do it, quote unquote, legitly, but in a way that is very unprecedented and very, very dangerous. But we have Chuck Schumer. Yay!
We have Chuck Schumer, and as such, we will win. We will not rest. We won't rest. All right. More depressing news from this past week. Planes crashed all over the country. I mean, we can't even get into how many planes just crashing and falling out of the skies. And these are tragedies. It sounds like I'm making a humorous statement, but it's really not. But President Trump claimed that the crash between an American Airlines flight and a Black Hawk helicopter over Ronald Reagan International Airport in D.C. was due to DEI. So now we know the culprit, thank God. DEI is apparently bringing down the planes. Now, real talk on this, he knew what he was doing. Saying DEI took the whole news cycle. That whole weekend was about Trump saying the plane crash was due to DEI. Meanwhile, all of these terrible candidates, or these nominees for cabinet positions, were having really bad weeks, and the entire narrative shifted. He gave cover to those people. He also gave cover to Elon Musk, who, plenty to talk about there. I'll turn that over to you in just a moment. But, this was a smokescreen. We took the bait. Again, we're taking the bait. All these ridiculous things he's saying, of course it had nothing to do with DEI. That's absurd. That's a terrible, horrible thing to say. I also just want to point out, this is one of the things that people do like about Trump, and it may be offensive to a lot of people. The average president, historically, you ask, are you going to the crash site? And they'll say, yes, I definitely want to get to the crash site. I want to pay respect to the victims. And Trump just says, no, where would I go? Into the water? People think that's funny. I'm sorry, maybe we're a mean-spirited public anymore, but people do. They think that's funny, and they think that it was a stupid question, which it kind of was. You're going to go to the crash site, to do what? What would I much rather have a president do, which he won't do, would be contact the families, reach out to the families of the people lost. But the way that he talks about things like that, I know that on MSNBC, what you would hear is oh, that's just despicable. And of course, so many things that Trump says are despicable. But the average person likes that. That's what I see. That's what I see in my day-to-day. They think that's funny. People who don't like Trump, they start laughing about it, because in reality it is kind of a stupid question. Are you going to go to the crash site? What benefit would that do for the president to be there? So, yeah, I just wanted to make that note. But again, obviously, this had nothing to do with DEI. It's offensive that he said that. Again, that's a ridiculous, insensitive thing to say. But he knew that. He wants you to take the bait. And the media has got to get better about focusing on what's actually happening and not just the nonsense that comes out of his mouth.
Right. And for those, I have a friend who's trained to be a pilot, and I asked her about the policies surrounding the FAA and what happens on this, because she's an expert on this. But for our listeners, it's important to note, as a counter to Trump's claim that somehow DEI is to blame for this, which is, again, ridiculous. Per the FAA's own protocol, every single controller who is in an ATC tower has to go through months of training to do their job after being hired. They all go through that training, and they all have to pass in order to be assigned to one of those towers in order to do that job. And if they're not good enough, they don't pass. It's quite literally as easy as that. There is no DEI component to this. People who are hired are trained, and if they pass training, they are assigned to a tower. The tower they get assigned to is based off their skill level, because different towers are going to be more difficult or easier depending on how congested or non-congested the airspace is. It's important to know the facts of this and not get caught up in the rhetoric. The DEI stuff is just a scapegoat. It's a stupid scapegoat because it makes no sense, but to the right person, it's an easy thing to blame. DEI is not picking a black dude over a white dude. DEI is not, that's not what that is. That's not what that is. It is an effort to assist in enhancing diverse workspaces. True to DEI, and this is factual, this is what I do for a living. The only circumstance in which you would pick someone over somebody else, and that decision was based off of their demographics, would be in two circumstances. One, that your workforce already has a significant disproportion of people of that demographic when compared to the community that your business is housed in. So if your business is housed in a community that is, let's just say, 60% African American, but you only have 3% African Americans in your workforce, then that's a little concerning. That doesn't really make sense considering your community. You might need to start looking at what to do in order to help diversify your workspace. However, the second component in that, and the only time that you would actually pick somebody based off of their race in this example, is if their resumes were quite literally identical. Identical resumes. And let me tell you something. In all the years that I've worked in higher in HR, and all the resumes I've seen in my life, I have never seen two identical resumes. That doesn't happen. Every resume is nearly like a fingerprint. Resumes aren't identical. You don't just get two resumes and say, wow, these are word for word the same, but one dude's white and one dude's black, so I hired the black guy. That doesn't actually happen. That's what DEI says you have to do. But the circumstances in which you would do that are so...
And if it did, If it did, though, you would still be hiring a qualified person for the job.
Absolutely.
So it's not like you're hiring some random person off the street. Oh, well, they check off the one little box that fits here. Yes, yep. Oh, well, not white. I guess that's what, like, that's such a ridiculous.
But people want you to think that's what it is. The Republicans and Trump want you to think that that's what the DEI is, but it is not.
It is not.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Okay. Next up,
Elon Musk. Elon Musk is given an unprecedented amount of access. And I mean unprecedented for someone who has no business being in government or on government property. But an unprecedented amount of access to government confidential information, including that of the U.S. Treasury Department, which houses financial information of citizens all over the country. Me and you and everyone listening to this pod definitely has information that is held within the U.S. Treasury Department that Elon Musk now just has.
This is scary, guys. This is what we need to be talking about every single day. Every single day we need to have like an Elon Musk tracker. Where is he today? What organization is he fucking with today? Let's cut the Trump tracker. What stupid tweet did he make? What stupid thing did he say? Focus on Elon Musk, because he is the one who is actively dismantling your government. I was talking to my dad earlier today, and my dad just said, this government, he says, I'm not even sure we have a government right now. And it's accurate. I mean, they are so focused on dismantling what we have, and that there's no plan for how to rebuild it, and certainly Musk has no interest in building anything. He's simply doing this to make as much money as he possibly can. I mean, if you haven't looked up the cronies that he has working for him, these like 21, 22-year-old, I hesitate to call them kids, but these crazy little cronies working for him, and they're all, working to essentially dismantle government and funnel wealth into the pockets of the wealthiest 1% Americans. TBD whether this will actually stand, whether this will actually work. But it's going to require all of us to fight back, and not just with some stupid chant. You have to be informed about what's going on. You have to be able to tell other people about what's going on. And so we're telling you, this is what's going on. And this is not like, we're conspiracy theories. It's happening right in front of you. They're not hiding it at all. The only way that they're hiding it is Trump throwing out stupid smokescreens. On that note, President Trump welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House, where President Trump announced that he believes that the Gaza Strip is a, quote, demolition site, end quote, and that Palestinians should be forcibly resettled out of Gaza, and that they'll be very happy about this, apparently.
Mm-hmm. They should be given a beautiful, brand new piece of land somewhere else.
Well, he called it the New Riviera. I mean, that's the mentality for this. He's thinking of this as a real estate opportunity for himself. And Prime Minister Netanyahu was effusive in his praise for Trump and said, quote, if this is what you can do in your first 3 weeks as president, one can only imagine what you're capable of doing in 4 years, end quote. All of this leads me to something that I really want to talk about. And, I just have to give a nice, sarcastic thank you to the Gaza protest voters for what you have contributed to in the last year, which has resulted in the election of a president who is actively going to hurt the people that you claim to care so much about. I care very deeply about the Palestinian people. I was absolutely appalled at some of the atrocities that have been rained upon them by the IDF in the last year and a half or so. And before then, for that record, there was no strategy posed in the way that you protested this and blamed it all on Genocide Joe, as you called him. And you know what has happened with this reticence to support the Democrats, this belief the Democrats, fueled a genocide? What you have brought is something way worse. Millions of people are going to suffer the repercussions of this. millions of innocent people, Palestinians living in Gaza. There's over 2 million of them specifically in Gaza, over 5 million in the region in general. What Trump is saying is basically, I'm handing you over to the far right-wing Israeli government. We're going to support the furthest, most extreme versions of the Israeli government, who really do want to eradicate people from what has been viewed and should be viewed as a sovereign land, its own independent state. And so this is what happens when you do things without thinking about the consequences. And it's so frustrating. I'm so pissed off about it. Because now, millions of Palestinians are going to suffer, and millions of the most vulnerable Americans are already suffering. Because what? Because you were angry about something and you totally without any strategy? Did you not notice how much Netanyahu loved the protests that were going on in the U.S.? Do you think that changed his mind? It encouraged them to continue doing it. There was nothing Netanyahu wanted more than having Donald Trump back in the White House. And if you watched that press conference yesterday, he might as well have been giving him a blowjob in the Oval Office. It's a joke, but it's also true. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely disgusting how much he just stroked Trump's ego and called him the greatest thing ever. And if you had been in the office for 6 more months after your first term, we would have already had peace with Saudi Arabia and all of this. Trump went off.
Well, he knows that that's what's going to get him what he wants.
Of course.
Everyone does. I mean, that's his new transportation secretary, his new secretary of defense. Like, all they're doing is thanking the president. Thank you so much. You're just so great. All these people, Netanyahu, everyone in Trump's orbit, they know how to get what they want. And here's the fear that I have. Here's the thing. Trump says, oh, the U.S. is going to own Gaza. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But again, that's the smokescreen, because what I am seeing is that he is going to say that. And yes, that might not happen. But the idea of pushing Palestinians out of Gaza, that's very real. That's a very real rhetoric, and he doesn't need to do anything for that to happen. He just has to endorse it. Israel will do that for them. Netanyahu just needs Trump to be okay with it, which he just did.
And the only person that stopped Netanyahu from committing even worse atrocities was the United States. It's the only people on the planet that were stopping him from...
Even Netanyahu knows that he needs a U.S. endorsement to do anything like that. He's not Putin. He can't just go and start a war with somebody and take over a land. He does need the endorsement of his quote-unquote allies, and now he has it. And he didn't have it before because Biden would have never given him that. And Trump's like, go ahead. Go, do it. And here's the thing. We knew it was going to happen. We knew. Listen, like, I get, Jesse, I get your anger. I get that it's so easy to be angry at, like, the individuals that allowed this to happen, and it's true. But what frustrates me, the thing that I'm so frustrated about, is that, like, if this were something that was unprecedented, that would be one thing. I'd be like, oh, okay, like, I get it. Like, you try to do what you thought was right, but who could have predicted this happening? Guys, we knew this was going to happen. He said he was going to do it. It's not even, like, it wasn't even a mystery. It wasn't even a smokescreen. He said he was going to do all these things. Nothing that has happened has been a surprise. Nothing in the last 20 days or whatever has been a surprise. Especially not him handing over Gaza to Bibi Netanyahu, and that's not surprising.
This was very apparent, and many of us were saying it a year ago. Yeah, you make a great point. Like, this is not surprising. It shouldn't be surprising to you. But how many times did I hear from people that Kamala would be no better than Trump for the Palestinian people, for the people of Gaza, that Biden would be no better than Trump? Well, that's wrong. Like, that doesn't excuse, and before you come at us, like, we're not excusing the U.S., enabling Israel to do some of the horrible things that they did. That's not what this is not about that. But the understanding of, like, what is the worst threat, and being unable to distinguish. I mean, it's the same thing as the people that said, "Oh, Trump will be no worse than Hillary." Like, that's a ridiculous thing to say. It's an absurd thing to say looking in hindsight, and I'm so tired of people not having the foresight to see what's coming when it's right in front of you, and making these false equivalencies that are just completely unfair. And the result is going to be devastation for the people that you claim to have cared so much about. If you voted as a protest vote against, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I don't care what state you live in. If that was your way of, flipping off the Democrats, flipping off the system, great job.
Look, you guys really owned the libs, didn't you?
Yeah, you really owned the libs. You owned Genocide Joe. Yeah, he's now signing, a nice little entertainment deal with Creative Artists Agency in Los Angeles. I don't know what sort of entertainment he's going to be doing, like knitting. But yeah, you really owned Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Yeah, you did great work for the Palestinian people. I'm so deeply saddened by this, but you're absolutely right. Oh, this is a smokescreen in terms of Trump saying, oh, he's going to own the Gaza or whatever. We're not doing that. Our allies would intervene. He's going to give it to Israel, and that's terrible. But this is all, again, more smokescreen so that we're talking about this while Elon Musk infiltrates our government. So,
as much as what happened has happened, if Gaza is still that big of an issue to you, if you are truly still that concerned over the crisis that's happening and is still happening in Gaza as you were a year ago, why have you stopped? Yes, it's worse now. And yes, there is a lot of blame to be shifted around, for sure. But hey, if you want to help out, this is kind of the time where you should be protesting more than ever before. Because before you were concerned about a war, and yes, that is a very concerning thing. But now they are quite literally under the threat of an ethnic cleanse, to be forcibly removed from their land. A fucking diaspora.
With no proposal.
No,
with no even proposal
Jordan
of where to
can
put
take
them.
Egypt can take them.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. This is like the Trail of Tears. This is proposing the Trail of Tears, and you're sitting over there on the sidelines now, silent, because and this is the thing that pisses me off. You know why? The reality is, you don't think you can change Trump's mind. You don't think that the protests can change anything with that. But Democrats, you can change their minds. You can make it uncomfortable for them. So you eat the people who you actually can reason with, but you leave the people that you can't reason with alone. Because it's not about actually solving a problem, it's just about winning. It's just about winning for you. We owned Joe Biden, we got him out of the race, we owned Kamala, we showed them. Okay, you lost. The thing that you're supposed to care about, you lost.
So go out there, go. And if you care about it, if you really care about it, please
protest.
Do it now.
You should
more
be
than ever.
protest.
Now is when. Yes, what happened. But
yes.
Now those people who are under threat of diaspora need you more than ever. And if you cared even an inkling about it, this is the opportunity to, do something worthwhile. Because what can potentially happen now that Trump's in the office and he's buddy with Netanyahu, who's going to give him what he wants, is more dangerous than you can ever imagine. Whatever, you're angry then, fine. Be angry now, again. Don't just scuttle to the recesses of the internet and say, well, I still stick to my vote, and they wouldn't have been any better. I see these comments on Instagram, on Reddit all the time. People are like, that doesn't mean that Kamala would have been any better. You don't know that, and no, she wouldn't have been. Common sense tells us that she would have been so much better, because what the fuck is worse than what's happening right now to them?
What could have been worse? Do you think Kamala Harris is going to drop a nuclear bomb on Gaza? Like what could be worse than this? It's unbelievable. Go out and... Where are the protests? Are you waiting for finals again? Is that what's going on? Are we waiting for finals? Because it always does seem to happen around finals that the college students want to freak out and protest. Midterms are coming up for most of you in a few weeks. Maybe you can start then, but oh, God forbid if it interferes with your spring break. No. If you care about this issue, then you should be still protesting right now. Otherwise, it was all for show. This is a real issue with real people. They need it. These people are in danger, and they continue to be in danger, and they're in more danger now than they've ever been. All right, we're going to take a breath here, and we're going to talk about things we can all agree on. Things we can all agree on. And Tyler and I, we both agree on this, and I think if you look at the scores on Rotten Tomatoes, most people agree on this. Emilia Perez is not a good movie. End of story. End of things we can all agree on.
It's so bad.
If you're unfamiliar with Emilia Perez, I envy you. Because this film has been nominated for 13 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, including Best Original Score. It is a musical crime drama. Let's give the general gist is that this movie is about an attorney who works for someone who runs a cartel, who was brought into by a Mexican cartel leader, who wants to have a sex change operation and kind of disappear. And that's the general thing. Wants to go from being a man to a woman, or as the song would say, from penis to vagina. These songs are terrible. They're absolutely atrocious. I'm a musical theater guy. I love musicals. Don't be coming at me.
You teach musical theater.
I literally teach musical theater. These songs are terrible. The plot is terrible. Most of the performances are terrible. The singing is terrible. The movie,
except Selena Gomez.
Selena Gomez is great, though they destroyed her character for no reason. And she gives one of the most ridiculous lines that has ever been uttered. I'm not even sure if I should say this on the podcast.
I'm gonna have to put a content warning.
Yeah, I mean, she says she's calling this person Gustavo. My pussy hurts when I think of you. I mean, this is serious. This is what she says. This movie is
in Spanish,
terrible.
by the way, and also the Spanish makes no sense.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Oh my god.
The songs are bad.
It's so bad. The songs stop like halfway through the song, and then they never come back. In most cases, like a minute and a half.
I'm gonna give you a performance of one right here, just for you. If you haven't heard this, you can YouTube this. This is real. It's very nice to meet you. I'd like to know about sex change operation. I see.
I want to know it all.
What is the protocol? The techniques and the this. How many operations? How much time do you need?
Mammoplasty?
Yes.
Vaginoplasty?
Yes.
Rhinoplasty?
Yes.
Laryngoplasty?
Yes.
Mammoplasty?
Yes.
Vaginoplasty?
Yes.
Rhinoplasty?
Yes.
Laryngoplasty?
Yes.
Chondrolarinoplasty?
What is that?
Adamsample reduction?
Yes. Wow. It is absolutely atrocious. It's just one of the worst things that I've ever seen, and the fact that it's nominated for more awards, has more nominations than The Godfather, than so many of these great films, is absurd. And the other humorous thing about this is that the lead actress, the transgender actress, who was nominated for Best Actress, the Academy Award, Carla Sofia Gascon, she apparently is not a great person. And now Hollywood wants to take it back. They want the nomination back because they found out that on Twitter, or X, she has previously called Islam a, quote, hotbed of infection for humanity, end quote. And in another X post, reacted to the 93rd Academy Awards, wondering if the Oscars had become a, quote, Afro-Korean festival, a Black Lives Matter demonstration, or International Women's Day, end quote. So yeah, there's been quite a bit of backlash to her, it's apparently not a very good person, or certainly not the type of person that Hollywood wants to prop up. But somehow, and for some reason, they're propping this movie up. The movie has a audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes of 17%. And this is really what I want to dive into. How out of touch Hollywood is with America. You want to know why no one cares what celebrities have to say? It's because you prop up stuff like this. Because you're saying, oh, it's a transgender story, and it gives us the opportunity to nominate a transgender actress for the first time. This ain't it. This ain't it. I'm all about propping up transgender actresses, actors, like transgender people. I'm all about propping up transgender stories. This movie ain't it. And the people around the country would tell you that. And it's not just people who are transphobic who hate the movie. They didn't go see the movie. These are people who went to see the movie, went on Netflix and watched the movie specifically, and were like, it's bad. And somehow Hollywood is...
It's bad. It's disingenuine. It's bad. It's disingenuine. It's not reflective of what most people watching this film would see as the real struggle of someone who might have to go through a transgender operation, all these things. Here's the thing, and this is what the issue that I have. And again, am I personally offended by this? No. I'm not a member of those communities. Friends that are and friends that were offended by this. And they were like, this is ridiculous. And what I hear is you want to make a story about a transgender woman, right, who goes through this crisis and decides to leave their family behind and leave their life behind to basically be born anew as the gender that they've always wanted. And that in itself is fine, right? But here's the thing. This movie is not just about an everyday Joe that decides to do this.
Exactly.
No. This movie is... The main character is this, cartel boss, the cartel boss of all cartel bosses.
The most privileged person.
Literally, he has people who bow to him and do his every whim. He has a gorgeous family, and yes, he has to struggle, and that struggle can very much exist in people with power. Absolutely, sure. But in this case, this person just decides, oh, I want to go through with this because I felt like I'm just in the wrong body. Okay, sure. This person has unlimited funds, quite literally unlimited money. So much money that when when Zoe Saldana's character asks him hey, okay, where are we going to do this? He goes, oh, we can't do it in Mexico, where they are located, although it wasn't filmed in Mexico. They can't do it in the United States because it's too close to Mexico. I need to find the best place to do this that's as far away as possible. I don't care about the money. It doesn't matter. And so she gets to send him to the most primo of primo surgeon hospitals in Bangkok.
Flying first class, which is an actual plot point.
Yes, I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, flying first class. And apparently, guys, first class gets you to your location faster than business or coach. Just so you know. She calls and she goes, I need a flight to Bangkok. He goes, okay, cool. What's your coach? She goes, oh, no, sorry. That will take too long. I need to get back by Thursday because I have some legal thing to go to. Oh, well, do you want to go to business class? And she goes, what's faster than business class? First class. Okay. As if flying first class is faster? What are you now in Air Force One because you're flying first class? Okay, sure, that makes sense. Anyway, this person with unlimited amounts of money gets to fly out and have this surgery. They then get to live amongst wealthy people and the wealthy elite of London for 3 years and is this very successful socialite, I guess. And the only thing that brings them back to Mexico, in quotation marks, because it's not actually Mexico where they filmed it, is they miss their family.
Their family that they paid to send to Switzerland and then pretended that they were dead. They said that they faked their death and then sent their family to Switzerland to live in luxury for those 3 years.
Right, and then spends all this money to go back to Mexico, send their family back to Mexico, starts a huge nonprofit to help victims of cartel violence, which is admittedly a very good thing to do. But again, all this to say that this individual gets to do all this because they have quite literally in the universe of the film an unlimited amount of money. Unlimited amount of money. And come on, name me anybody you know that is a member of the LGBTQ community or trans community that has that amount of money and privilege to do all that. And you'll realize that this movie, like, it doesn't speak to the average viewer, and definitely doesn't speak to the average transgender viewer, because no one's going to be able to put themselves in those shoes. Who is this movie for? Like,
it's like us, applauding for Caitlyn Jenner winning the Arthur Ashe Courage Award at the ESPYs back in 2015, as if Caitlyn Jenner doesn't come from immense privilege and wealth, and then, find out later, of course, that Caitlyn Jenner is not the best advocate for trans rights or for the LGBTQ community. This is...
And this is not even touching upon all the plot holes in this film.
Yeah.
Like, there's actual, like, film... Like, we're talking about kind of, like, meta stuff with this movie and what's problematic with it. But, like, even outside of the meta, like... The movie itself is bad.
It's terrible.
Like,
it's terrible.
The editing is atrocious, and yet it's nominated next to fucking Dune. That is insulting to Dune. Like, come on now.
It's insulting to my eyes. I mean, like, and more importantly, insulting to my ears to have to listen to this nonsense. It's just so bad, and Hollywood... At some point, you have to realize how, like, be a little more self-aware about how out of touch you are. Like, just try. Can you try to be a little more self-aware? Because you're just getting more and more out of touch with the average person in this country, to the point where, like, you're not cool anymore. People aren't looking up to people in Hollywood in the way that they used to, and it's largely because you know nothing about, like, how the average person lives, and you're propping up stuff like this, which is really just, like, performative. And I like my performances on the screen, in the movie, not outside of it.
Listen, this movie is so bad, guys. This movie is so bad.
10 out of 10 would recommend watching.
The writing is... watch this, please. My audience, watch this. Go watch it. It's on Netflix. If you have Netflix, it's free. Thankfully. I don't think I can imagine paying money for this.
Other than the hours of your life that you will not get back. It's free.
Both watching and thinking about this afterwards.
Oh, God.
And here's the thing. Here's the other thing, the kind of meta thing about this. The director, the French director, did not film in Mexico, did not even know much about Mexican culture when writing the film, didn't even know Spanish when he wrote the primarily Spanish-speaking script. Like, I don't... Like, how... it's... This film is written in such a tone-deaf way. It's
a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece, Tyler. You're just missing it. You're just missing...
I don't have the special eyes, right?
You need the special eyes. You just don't have the eyes that we have in Hollywood.
Clearly not, yes. But no, I mean, the Spanish is awful in this. When I first saw this film, my knee-jerk reaction when I heard the Spanish in this was... So, when I was growing up, my grandparents would always... watch on the Spanish-speaking channels like Telemundo and other ones in Los Angeles. There was a segment, usually during like daytime television hours, that these stations would show a popular like Western movie dubbed in Spanish, and the dub is pretty bad. Like it's a very, very lazy Spanish dub of all sorts of any movie you can think of, the Transformers, spaghetti westerns, whatever, like whatever hot movie is going on, they'll dub it for like next to no money at all. They'll use the same like 3 or 4 voice actors to do like every single character of every single movie ever, and then they'll put it on the screen for people to watch. And I grew up listening to like these like really terrible Spanish dubs because my grandparents would watch it. And the Spanish in this film quite literally sounds like a terrible Spanish dub that you would see on Telemundo at like 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. It's so inorganic. It's like the opposite of a Tarantino script. It's the most inorganic Spanish language I've ever heard in my life.
You knew he was going to bring up Tarantino, folks.
I
you just
always
knew it.
have if there's an opportunity for me to bring up Tarantino, I will.
Bringing up Tarantino in a discussion of Emilia Perez is honestly offensive.
Yeah.
Whether you like Tarantino or not, I mean, I'm not a big Michael Bay fan, but bringing up Michael Bay in a discussion about Emilia Perez is offensive. Like, it's that level of bad.
Michael Bay would have made the explosion at the very end of the movie a lot more believable.
This is true.
Because everyone knows cars explode after getting into accidents and stalling for like 5 minutes. Because that makes sense.
Boom!
Oh, God. Emilia Perez.
All right, folks. Well, thank you all so much for listening. I know this was a wild day, and we ended with a wild discussion about a film that you may or may not have seen. You're welcome, because now you know that you really don't need to, unless you like that sort of thing. Overall, folks, I get it. What I want to say is I understand that this is a really stressful time. It's exhausting. It's really difficult to process everything that is happening. Don't give up. We cannot give up. You can't give up on democracy. You can't give up on this country. There are too many people and too many lives at stake, and it's not just, as we've talked about here today, it's not just the people here in this country, it's lives around the world that are depending on us. And they're scared. People are scared in our country, and they're scared around the world about the repercussions of what's going to happen these next couple of years, and it's going to be brutal, and it's going to be tough, and it's going to get worse before it will get better, but we have to make sure that there is a light at the end of that tunnel, and you do that by being strategic, by being smart, by staying aware of the issues, and focusing on how you can fight back in the most effective, strategic way. And we're going to do our part to try and help you, sort out those answers to those questions. We're looking forward to being able to share our insights with you guys and hear from you. So, looking forward in the coming weeks to bringing on some guests to discuss, people who are working on the ground to fight back on these issues as well, but also just various perspectives that we can bring on, people that may not agree with what we have to say, but we're going to have the really difficult discussions that we need to have. From Manchester, New Hampshire, my name is Jesse Saywell.
And from Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Ehrig.
And this has been Reunited States. Until next week. When the whole world has got you down and there's no one else around, turn that crown right upside